I moved to Denver back in 1987. I was single at the time and living alone. In 1988, I bought a house in an area of town called Washington Park. Bought an old 1928 bungalow, and I lived in my new old home all of about 2 days when there was a knock on the front door. I opened the front door, and standing there was my postal carrier. He said, "Good morning, Mr. Sanborn. My name is Fred. I just stopped by to say welcome to the neighborhood, introduce myself, and find out a little bit about you and what you do for a living." Been receiving mail all of my adult life. Can't ever recall getting a personal introduction to my postal carrier. But I thought it was a nice touch. I said, "Fred, thanks for stopping by." I said, "I'm a professional communicator. I do not have a real job." Fred said, "Well, that's important for me to know. If you're a speaker and author, you must travel a lot." I said, "Yeah, I'm on the road about 180, 200 days a year." He said, "Great. If you'll just give me your calendar so that I know when you're in town. I'll hold your mail for you. I'll bundle it. I'll only deliver it on the days that you're here to receive it." Now, I'd never had a choice of a la carte mail service before either. I said, "Fred, that's probably not necessary. I have a pretty big box nailed right here on the side of the house. Why don't you just leave the mail in the box? I'll pick it up when I come back into town." Fred said, "Oh, Mr. Sanborn, let me point out, in this neighborhood, burglars watch for mail buildup in the box. I mean, if they see all the mail in your box, they'll know you're out of town. You might be robbed." He said, "Here's what I'd recommend instead." He said, "I'll be glad to put your mail in the box only as long as the lid closes. If that area becomes too full, I'll put the mail between the screen door and the front door. Nobody can see it there. And if that area becomes too full of mail, I'll hold the rest of your mail for you until you come back into town." Now, Fred is more worried about my mail than I am. But he is the postal professional. I say, "Okay, Fred, let's try that." A couple weeks later, I'm coming back from a trip. As I'm unlocking the front door, I notice my doormat is missing. I figure chances are pretty good they're not ripping off doormats in Denver yet. I look around on my front porch, smaller than this stage. In the corner of the porch is a doormat, my doormat, only it's covering something. Here's what had happened. UPS had misdelivered a box of mine 5 doors down, left my box on somebody else's porch. Lucky for me, Fred the postman was on the job. Fred picked up this heavy box, carried it down to my porch, put it in the corner, wrote a personal note of explanation on it, then tried to disguise it with a doormat so nobody would take it. Not only is Fred delivering the mail, now he's picking up slack for UPS. I had a guy come up to me in Los Angeles, heard the story. He said, "Hey, be honest. Were you talking about the United States Postal Service? Or does Denver have their own?" I said, "No, unbelievably, this is the U.S. Postal Service." That first Christmas, I left a little gift in the box to thank Fred for his exceptional service. Next day the mail got delivered, I had an unusual letter in my mail. See, the letter had a stamp on it, but the stamp wasn't canceled. I see from the return address the letter is from Fred Shea, my postal carrier. See, Fred lives on the north side of town. I lived in the center of the city. Fred knows it is a felony to put unposted mail in a box. So even though he carried the letter from his house to my house, he still put a stamp on just to keep it legal. So after I cut the stamp off, I read the letter. The letter said, "Dear Mr. Sanborn, thank you for remembering me at Christmas. I'm flattered that you talk about me in your speeches and seminars. I hope I can continue to provide exceptional service. Sincerely, Fred the postman." Let's jump forward in time. 1995, I met my wife, Darla. 1997, we were expecting our first child. We moved to Highlands Ranch, 17 miles south of Denver. But for nearly 10 years, Fred the postman delivered my mail and later Darla's mail and my mail. And in those 10 years, I was reminded of something important, and that is that truth is transferable. What's true at work is true at home. What's true of your postal carrier should be true of educators, politicians, lawyers, and doctors. It should be true of you and I.